Everybody please take your seats. We're going to go ahead and get started now. Making his way to the podium is the Executive Director of the Center for Energy Efficiency and Sustainability at Ingersoll Rand, Scott Tew.
Hello everyone, please get your seat once again for the second half of today's program. It's delighted to see everybody coming back. You're all smiling because the food was so good. Thanks to whoever catered that. I'm not sure who it was, but I do know one thing, that the Greenbuilder Media team, they know how to put on a meeting, and they also know how to feed people well. So it's a pleasure always to attend anything that Ron and Sarah are involved with. Also, if you're like me, you have really enjoyed today's remarks and speakers. Sarah and Ron once again have done this great job of putting together speakers that have touched on all the big topics, policy, the models for a change to a third revolution, Jeremy this morning. We've also heard from people like Chris and others who are working at it on the ground in our nation. And thankfully, we're going to continue that this afternoon. I've really had some great experience spending time with people who are on the ground, movers, shakers, people that are concerned about doing things where they live, where they work, people that work with a passion. And this afternoon, we're going to continue what we started this morning with some fantastic speakers. It's a great pleasure of mine to introduce the next speaker who's going to join me on stage, really for a conversation. And let me just begin by reading a background. Ron, I'll try to keep to your motto of shorter is better, although I could go on all afternoon with the accomplishments of the next speaker who will join me on stage. It's a pleasure this afternoon to welcome Laura Turner-Seydel to the stage. She's an international environmental advocate and an eco-living expert. That's a great title to have in your behind your name, an eco-living expert. In my time I've spent with Laura, it's not just a title that of just a few words strung together. It's something that she's lived all of her life. We'll talk about some of her passions in a moment, but you can tell somebody has a passion within just moments of speaking to them, and that's been my experience already with Laura. As an eco-living expert, she's also done many things for the city of Atlanta, where she's from. She is the chairperson of the Captain Planet Foundation, which has worked worldwide for 25 years to advocate generations of environmentally literate children empowered to protect and sustain the natural systems upon which life begins and depends. She is known for her passion around toxins in the environment, clean water, a host of things. And I'll just read a couple of things that she's done as she joins me on the stage. She also, along with her husband, founded the Chattahoochee Riverkeeper years ago in 1994. She serves on the board of her family's foundations, the Turner Foundation, the Jane Smith Turner Foundation, the Turner Endangered Species Fund, and Ted's Montana Grill. She will be drawing from those experiences in her remarks this afternoon with me. Please welcome Laura Turner-Seydel. Welcome, Laura. Thanks for joining me on stage. We are going to have a conversation. You and I have talked about a few things that I wanted to hear about. I thought I would start this. I have a personal story. 11 years ago this week, as I checked my notes last week after Laura and I spoke, I actually attended an event where Laura's dad, Ted Turner, announced that he was making a huge investment in a clean energy fund in New Jersey, where I lived at the time. And I remember the remarks that he made in his press conference where he was announcing this solar company and big investment in New Jersey. He said that people have called me crazy all my life. They called me crazy when I said that I believe a 24-hour news company could make money and be good for the world. They're calling me crazy now when I say things around clean energy and the need for more solar and renewable energy. And 11 years ago, there were people in the room, I think, that doubted whether or not renewable energy had staying power. And Laura is from a family of pioneers, and I think part of some of the things her dad said that day about whether or not people believe it, I think it's true, and I will move forward anyway, and I think that's been part of your background too. I know that you have a lot of passions, some that I've mentioned. I'd like for you to talk about some of those passions now as we get started, just some of your background about things that drive your personal passions and things that you work on personally.
Well, it's interesting that you start off by talking about my dad, Ted Turner. He really, it's like living with him and being raised by him is like drinking out of a fire hose 24/7. And he's had, and it's really, ignorance is bliss in some cases. It's like the less you know, the better you are. And I'm staying to the end of this thing today, which means I'll be missing the championship game, but I figured I'd much rather be with you guys than be, even though Arthur Blank built the first LEED Platinum NFL, Football League, not Hockey League, stadium and National Soccer League stadium. And if you can get to Atlanta, I highly recommend you visit Scott Jacobs, who's the GM for the building, and take the behind the scenes tour. It is a remarkable feat. But just to, I have to say, go Dogs. Go Dogs.
And Roll
I'm
Tide.
from Georgia. Yeah, that's
both those
right.
states for a reason.
So, but Dad really set a high bar when it comes to identifying missing pieces of the puzzle, things that need to happen for the better of humanity. And then against all odds, he'd go for it anyway if he believed in his heart of hearts that it was the right thing to do, and come hell or high water, he was going to make sure that those things happened. And I would definitely say that CNN, was huge. It really flipped on a light switch around the world, and all the rats and cockroaches ran for cover. He put the Gulf War, in our living rooms so that we could see what war is an atrocity, and, innocent people losing their lives, men, women, and children that have nothing to do with the war, and how wrong it was. And, and his hopes were that if people could see what war looked like, maybe we'd get rid of it and, take all those resources and invest them in our children, in the future, health and education, and, things that we really need to evolve as a species. And then he started the Nuclear Threat Initiative with Sam Nunn, because he says that the number one threat to the human species and civilization is nuclear weapons. So he went and did something about it. He started this amazing organization. And if he were here, he'd want to talk about it. Climate change is number 2, folks. Short-term nuclear weapons, long-term climate change, or longer term, and as we've heard, that's reality now. It's not off in the future, it's now. But 122 countries at the UN banned nuclear weapons for the first time, and when 50 countries ratify it, it becomes international law. And then the Peace Prize went to an organization called the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. In December, she's 30 years old, the director of that organization, accepted the prize, and any of you millennials in the room need to look up her speech and share it through your social media channels, because this has been an issue that flies totally under the radar screen. But you guys would not be able to sleep at night if you knew the security system that the nuclear weapons on hair trigger alert are managed by. It's the 1970s floppy disk technology, the size of a record album. Half of you in this room have never even seen that. Or know that it exists. And so, the risks are really high, and we need to take this up as a serious issue. And there's $150 million a day, I'm getting so off track, $150 million a day goes for maintaining 1,200 nuclear warheads on hair trigger alert in this country alone. And how about if we just saved half of that and reinvested it into smart buildings and energy? And, that would be really good
Here
thing.
we are, back on track.
I'm so sorry,
That's
but
good.
he would want me to talk about that.
No, it was great. So actually, you mentioned smart buildings, and Atlanta you know very well. You've been there, your roots run deep. John R. is the current Sustainability Director for the city. Could you talk about some of the big things happening in Atlanta that you're excited about that could possibly other cities here in the room could be learning from?
Well, certainly I can do that. But when, 25 years ago, Atlanta was probably Forbes magazine listed us as the #1 most polluted city in the country. We were the #1 asthma capital of the country. We were being fined $250,000 a day by the EPA because of infractions of the Clean Water Act. So we had, a lot of ground to make up. But what was really terrific is you heard about that I co-founded the Chattahoochee Riverkeeper 23 years ago, and we sued the city of Atlanta after trying to work with them. The mayor that was in power then actually went to prison for other reasons, and the next mayor that came in became known as the sewer mayor. And she had to go out because of the lawsuit that the Riverkeeper won, had to go out and sue. We sued the city of Atlanta, won, and then the mayor went out and raised $4 billion in bonds to retrofit and upgrade our antiquated sewer system. So every street in Atlanta has been basically torn up. We're still not there, 90% fewer spills, but there's still some things that we need to do, and we're doing them in Atlanta. The Better Buildings Challenge, I'm sure a lot of you know about that, but Atlanta out of 75 cities is #1, 115 million feet of commercial space and municipal space that has made a commitment to reduce energy use by 20% by 2020, and not only energy, but water, because of the water energy nexus, and we have very expensive water. And 40% of those buildings have completed their projects, and we've already reached our goal of 20% reductions in energy and 17% in water. And there's been hundreds of jobs created, about $27 million of savings already. It's been incredible, and there's a new iteration that's getting ready to launch of the Better Buildings Challenge, which will include healthy indoor air quality and healthy buildings, and then also waste diversion, which is super important. We also have we just slid in on at the very end. We are the 100th city to be part of the Rockefeller Resilient Cities. Obviously, that addresses a lot of short-term shocks and long-term stressors. Natural disasters, drought, floods, food access, a lot of other things that are really important to consider in the long term that make your city safe. And they've came out with an amazing plan, and I hope you will take a look at it, because there's a lot of lessons learned there and a lot of programs that you can adopt. The City Council last summer approved 100% renewable energy for the City of Atlanta by 2035, and for all municipal buildings by 2025. The mayor has made a commitment to 1.5 megawatts of solar, rooftop solar, to help make that happen. And then there was a requirement for commercial buildings over 25,000 square feet that they have to do a baseline audit of their energy use, and then track it on an annual basis, and then do an official audit every 10 years. Because really what happens is when building owners understand what their building consumption looks like, then they're much more liable to go and do something about it and upgrade the systems, because when they do, it's a tremendous amount of savings for them. And with the new energy plan of getting Atlanta to 100%, we're only at 2% now. So it's like a major heavy lift, but a big part of that is going to be looking at our building codes and making sure that once they're brought up to where they need to be, enforcing them is going to be really absolutely key. And then just a couple of weeks, well, I would say in November before the election, or in October, late October, City Council passed another ordinance that requires that commercial buildings and multifamily units provide 20% of parking for EVs, and that single-family homes that are new have to be wired for EV or be EV ready. So there's a lot of things cooking in Atlanta that I'm proud of, and John R., my son, some of you know in the room, is an awesome sustainability director, and Chris Castro was the youngest in the world, and now my son took that away from Chris. So we'll leave it up to you guys, you know?
That's right. She got you from the stage, Chris.
We need fleet farming, though. We need fleet farming, so we need to change our ordinance again to make sure that our front yards in the city of Atlanta we can grow healthy food right there. But
yeah, you just touched on something I was just about to ask about. I know that you mentioned the energy plan. The city also has a resiliency plan, and that term is being used a lot in cities now, this resiliency plan. Most of us think about buildings, frankly, when we think about city resiliency, but it's much more than that. Those of you nodding your head probably mean you actually are more knowledgeable audience than most any we would gather in the U.S. The resiliency plan is much more than just buildings, and one of your areas I know that you and I share a passion for, and that's fresh local food. Can you talk about what's happening in Atlanta related to the resiliency plan and food?
well, I am very passionate about kids growing their own food, and especially in the school setting. And it's Captain Planet has funded about 1,000 school gardens across the country, and about 7 years ago we rolled out a learning garden program, of which we have 250 schools in the city of Atlanta, the City of Atlanta Public Schools, and 4 other districts within Metro Atlanta, where kids are going outside into an outdoor living laboratory and learning STEM subjects right there with their teachers, all the supplies that the teachers need, teacher training, mobile kitchen carts. So what the kids are actually growing in the gardens on the school campus, they're bringing into the classroom and tasting organic vegetarian food, in a lot of cases for the first time. It's not what they're getting in the cafeteria. And we have to inform kids' palates, because as we heard Jeremy say, what's the number 2 cause of greenhouse gas emissions? Well, it's raising animal protein for human consumption, and we have very little of it at our lunch today, which I was happy about. But so we have to give kids options, and they have to understand their own health and nutrition. And once kids know how to grow their own food, it's something that you can never take away from them, and it's so critically important. As far as our city of Atlanta, to expound on that, in 2014, there was an update of our city ordinances, our city ordinance that really made it tough for urban growers and food entrepreneurs to get permits to grow food within the city limits, and then to be able to sell that and get loans, microloans, for what they wanted to do. And so now we have a very friendly ordinance, and that was a game changer. And then 2015, Mayor Reed went out and hired the first director of urban agriculture in the U.S., and it's just been a great model. And that director has been working to figure out how to get fresh, healthy food to 75% of Atlanta's population by 2020. When in 2010, when Mayor Reed took over, it was the number of citizens living in a food desert, it was 53%, and now we're 36%, so we've dropped it somewhat, but because the community has come together in unprecedented ways to solve food desert issues, and it fits so nicely into urban ag and what the city's trying to do. But they're taking vacant lots and turning those into gardens. Power line easements, there are several gardens that are very successful there. There are 189 community gardens, 11 farms, 45 orchards. It's something that is absolutely critical, because if we want to have happy, healthy communities, and they need to be eating healthy food, and really a plant-based diet is critical to that. So
Thanks for touching on food. We've not heard a lot about that this morning. The other thing that we haven't really talked much about today so far is water. I know with your background in riverkeepers, you touched on it. There's a lot of innovative things happening with water. Chris was mentioning last night that half the water in most cities, not just Orlando, is used for irrigation. But there's also lots of great things happening, very innovative around water. What's something that excites you right now around water quality and water issues?
there are a couple of things. As you know, red states have cut their environmental protection division budgets to the quick, to the bone. And without testing and monitoring the rivers and tributaries and lakes and what have you, there is no enforcement. And for the whole state of Georgia, there are only 2 employees for the Georgia EPD that are out there testing, and that's just not going to get you anywhere. So the riverkeeper, Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, which was well, I'm not even going to get into that. I'll be off on a tangent. But they decided that they wanted to start a neighborhood watch program that would bring partner organizations and individuals together to make up the biggest in Georgia and the biggest in the southeastern United States, and one of the biggest in the nation, but citizen science programs, so that these organizations and individuals could go out and test and monitor the waters in their tributaries and rivers to become the eyes and ears for the Georgia EPD, so that, it's a rigorous certification process, but once they are certified, then their data matters. And last year alone, there was 109 partners, and it was 186 monitoring sites in the Chattahoochee corridor, and then 5,000 water samples were taken, and 16 sewer overflows were detected and reported to local governments so that they could be handled and stopped. And that's what we need in every community across the U.S. And because of the model that we set, it's the South Carolina and Alabama have picked that same neighborhood water watch program up. And then another thing that we did, we raised private dollars to build an in-house lab to analyze water samples. So a typical water sample for E. coli, if you send it off to a university, it's going to cost you $45, and it takes a long time to get the information back usually. But in the in-house lab, it's $6 a water sample. So that is a huge savings for these partners in the neighborhood water watch. And I just think that, for river keepers, there are 350 of them in 30 countries around the globe. They all need to have something like this going on, especially when your government is not doing the work that they're supposed to be doing when you have a Clean Water Act. So that's one thing. And then in Atlanta, we have part of the resiliency plan, which I, again, encourage you to take a look at, because there's 53 projects going on right now in the city. But a lot of it is using green infrastructure to, using parks with a purpose, so that there are lakes and retention ponds and bioswales, part of smart streets, to take the floodwaters that are usually wreaking havoc on the sewer system in the form of combined sewer overflows. So this is a way to retain that water, to have it naturally filtrate back into the water cycle, but it turns out that it becomes a huge amenity for the community itself. And you know, it's just a great way to address some of those real issues, and then also save millions of dollars, because then you don't have to have the pipes and the infrastructure as part of the sewer system to treat to treat all this excess water that comes because of all the impervious surface that we have in our cities.
That's great. One of the things I really appreciate about hearing from Laura is this whole focus on systems and partnerships, collaboration to make something big happen for a system. We heard this morning about the systems that are either forming or that have formed, and Laura's living it every day, sort of at a macro, a bit large urban scape area. Sometimes I think people in a room like this are looking for the takeaway. They're looking for the, what's that simple thing I can do leaving here? How do you make it personal? And so in our last couple of minutes, could you just share your thought about what is one takeaway that everyone in this room, no matter whether they're from the public sector, corporate sector, maybe some students here, what's the thing that we all should have on our mind?
There are no recycling bins in the house. Just reduce, reuse, recycle, and refuse one-use throwaway plastics. My number one pet peeve.
Yes,
That's the one thing.
Tell us your
plastic
number one.
straws. 500 million of them go to waste, to a landfill, or end up on our beaches and up the nose of a turtle each and every day in the United States. And it's made out of oil. And we know that we need to get away from this ridiculous, you know, kind of representation of the waste of the American culture. So Coca-Cola, even in their new ads, shows a stainless steel straw in a glass. But you should try to take those 4 R's and create zero waste zones in your home, in your office, in your place of worship, in your business, and just keep that in mind, and standardize and globalize recycling labels. So it's not the shape, size, or the bin of the recycling. It is all about the labeling, so people aren't scratching their heads when they walk up to the bin and throw their Starbucks coffee in on top of the paper and everything else that's in there. And basically it's rendered you know, worthless. So anyway, thank you so much. That was a lot for one thing, and I see where we're zeroed out
It's
here.
just zeros there. Yeah. So with that, if you feel guilty about the straw that you have on the table, that's a good thing. And would you help me
We don't have any straws here.
No, that's right.
We have plastic cups, and we have plastic utensils. So we're getting there, but we're not all the way there.
We're getting there. Thanks for all you're doing. Help me thank Laura. Thank you.
Thank you.